Hello, everybody. Bonjour, tout le monde. Delighted to have you on board. Welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel here on YouTube. Now, this is a wine educational channel which is designed to give you the information that you need to study and really bring the concepts to life, to give you the confidence to, of course, smash your examinations out of the park. Now, this series here is called Wines of the World for the WSET Level 4. That is the diploma. And this is a series on Bordeaux. Now, Bordeaux is a large area. So this is Series 1, Part 2. Now, let's just look at that. You'll see that there are a whopping 9 series in the Bordeaux section. My gosh, it's an epic novel, this one. And we are looking in the series 1 at really the overview of Bordeaux, including the key grape varieties. So I've already covered the topic of history and a bit of an introduction. On part 2 here, we are looking at climate. Now, part 1 and part 2, this one, is available as free content on the world of YouTube here. But parts 3 through to 8 are only available on my e-learning portal. That's www.winewithjimmy.com. So please go across to that to sign up to exclusive video content, ad-free as well, and there's plenty and plenty of extra little bits like flashcards to help you with your studies. Hundreds upon hundreds of videos are found there. If you want to get in contact, you can comment on this video. If you have any questions, any concerns, any theories, please pop them on the comment section below this video on YouTube and click like and subscribe, or you can use social media that you see at the bottom of every slide. So let's rock and roll with talking about Bordeaux climate. And we're going to go into things like the general climate, key contributing factors like the Landes pine forest, the wonderful sand dunes at Arcachon, and things like frost and hailstorms. All those kind of things will be covered in this section. So first of all, what about the macro climate of this zone? So we say that this has, generally speaking, a moderate maritime climate. So moderate meaning that the warmth factor here is in the middle, it's that moderate, and maritime meaning affected, of course, by an ocean or a sea quite significantly. The cool Atlantic Ocean that sits to its west is really the cooling influence, but also really the wet influence here. It brings in a lot of moisture and rain. In the best years, gentle heat through the growing season, sufficient rainfall to promote growth and ripening, and fine, relatively dry and warm early autumns allow for a real steady and complete season for ripening. Notice all those words there. We're talking about sufficient rainfall. We're talking about gentle heat. We're talking about relatively dry, fine, etc. Nothing in extremes. And that really, I think, is a great way to really capture the essence of a Bordeaux wine. A very fine Bordeaux red is everything around that. Fine, elegant, really lovely. And it really does translate from a very fine vintage you can get. And of course, you can get poor vintages as well in such a vintage variable area. So such a climate, like I just mentioned, can result in an excellent balance of things like tannin, acidity, and sugar, of course. And I think that's really what can add to the complexities in elegance and also longevity of the Bordeaux wine styles. The maritime influence is very much less pronounced in the easterly areas. That's, of course, places like the right bank, for example, but it still remains a factor. So really, the left bank is the most affected by the maritime influence, as one would expect. So what kind of protection do we have? Because it's quite a big impending factor, this Gulf Stream Atlantic influence that comes across Bordeaux. So one thing we have here is a big pine forest, which is mainly in the southern section between the coast and our vineyards. But think of about Bordeaux city and below for most of this. This is called the Landes pine forest. It is the largest man-made forest in Europe, totaling somewhere around 1.1 million hectares. It's very significant. So the Atlantic weather and storms are partially buffered by this extensive geographical feature. Now, there are estates that actually are on the fringe of these forests, such as Domaine de Chevalier in Pessac-Léognan, specifically Léognan, and many in Listrac in the Médoc. And they actually are cooler and more marginal in their climatic conditions than neighbours to the east. In the northern Médoc, so of course going towards the peninsula spit, so this is towards the Gironde estuary, the forest is really not there. We have a very sort of a lack of the forest, so therefore it's much more open to maritime influence. And this is one of the reasons they do say that the Médoc part in the north, why it is substandard generally to the Haut-Médoc, to the southern section below it. So that's really one key factor that's mentioned in your text, but one that isn't, but I wanted to include because it really is an important factor, is really the sand dunes that we find of Arcachon Bay and above. So this is very important. Now, you may, wherever you may come from in the world, you may think of sand dunes. Of course, you could quickly walk over them within about a minute. Not the sand dunes of Arcachon Bay. They are extensive. They are a natural heritage site since 1994. And they are the highest sand dunes in Europe. And of course, you've even got these staircases to climb to the top of them. It can take about 15-20 minutes in total for some of these sand dunes. The dune of Pilar, which is the highest one, is so formidable in size that when you get to the top, you have a beautiful panorama of Arcachon Bay, the Cap Ferret lighthouse, and woodland, which stretches across the horizon as well. Of course, that's the Landes pine forest. So it's really significant. And of course, these are like hills. They're going to offer protection against some of the weather patterns that come across. So I wanted to include that as well. Very much worth taking the about half an hour trip out to the coast in good traffic. It can take up to an hour when it's very busy. And go and, of course, eat oysters and seafood with some of the beautiful Bordeaux white wines whilst you are out there. The rainfall here is variable, meaning that it really can dramatically change year from year, but you will find it being rainfall that occurs throughout the year. That's because it's a maritime climate. And we're talking at an average of 950 millimeters per year. This is substantial. If you know London is about 650, 700 millimeters per year. So it's significantly more than a city which is exceptionally well known for rain, being London. But that's because of its location here on the Atlantic. London is actually more grayer, less rainier. So we get rainfall throughout the year. Flooding is also possible in extreme years, such as 2018 as well, as you can see in this picture. Now, what does this rainfall do? So excessive rain at key moments in the vine's cycle is a real important factor for vintage variation. So rain at flowering can result in things like couleur and millerange, which leads to poor fruit set. Now, if you don't know these terms, please look at my videos on these terms under the viticulture vinification section, the D1 section, go into a lot of detail about these. More problems. So rain throughout the growing season can result in, of course, increased disease pressure with mildew throughout the year and rot towards the end of the year. Also, further problems, of course, you can lead to rain at the end of the season. So this is after veraison and towards harvest, leads to unripe fruit. Why? Well, that's because the vine itself is getting plenty of water and it's growing. So you have a lot of shoot and leaf growth, which then detracts from the ripening of the berries. And of course, fungal diseases can also continue at this point. And then really at harvest time, if you get rainfall, you can get too much water into the soil, up through the roots and into the grapes, causing dilution, bloating, and sometimes splitting. So if you want more information across the spectrum of all of those problems, please look at my Viticulture Vinification D1 section. You'll find all that information just there. Just a word on climate change. So here, also as in elsewhere in Europe, climate change has led to hot, dry summers with sometimes insufficient rainfall. The hardy grape varieties we find across Bordeaux can resist these extreme temperatures, but in the hot, dry years, such as 2003, which I've got a map up of on the slide, this can lead to wines both red and white, which have lower acidities and lack balance and ageability. You'll find that the wines are potentially more alcoholic than in the past, as the producers are waiting for phenolic ripeness. So what we mean by that is that the vine struggles through the summer months through drought, and in fact causes a lot of blocking. So this stops grape sugar accumulation throughout normally that August and early September. So what happens is there are dangerously low Brix levels during 2003, something you wouldn't think of naturally due to the exceptional heat, but it was too intensive. So then a lot of the producers waited a lot later to get sufficient alcohol levels. This dramatically drops the acidity. And as a result, you have wines which are full and fruity, but very lacking finesse or freshness. And a lot of the wines, because of that lack of acidity, tended to lack the ageability through 2003. Some have held it together, but not too many of them. So yes, a bit of information on climate change there. There's the occasional frost. From time to time, you'll find some frost happening, as in 1956, 1991, which affected many parts of France, and 2017, when crops have been quite significantly decimated. But we do tend to have a more frequent protection, a more consistent protection here due to the effect of the Gironde estuary and due to the Atlantic, of course. And you tend to find a lot of the frost happening in areas that are called frost pockets, which are less influenced by the Atlantic. But it does happen, the frosts here. There is actually more widespread hail, which of course is sporadic, as it normally is in nature, but it can be exceptionally destructive. And all you've got to do is type in on a search engine on the internet something to do with Bordeaux hail, and you'll get quite a few stories through recent times of it. That is a picture from Bordeaux vineyard. So that brings me to the end on the section on the climate for Bordeaux. I do hope you have enjoyed it. If you want to join me for parts 3 through to 8, that's geology, grape varieties, then please, you'll have to go across to my e-learning portal. That's at www.winewithjimmy.com, joining the thousands and thousands of subscribers to that portal to help people study more about wine and in a much more fun and informative way. If you do have any comments and questions or concerns, please do pop them in the comments section below this video, or get in touch by social media you see at the bottom of every slide. Make sure you click like and subscribe as well. And if you find yourself in the city of London in the United Kingdom, then please come and see me at one of my establishments for a class, a glass, or a bottle. Cheers and ciao for now. See you. Bye-bye.